What if the problem isn't that your life is bad? It's that you can't feel that it's good. There's a name for this: anhedonia. It's the psychological state where positive experiences stop producing positive feelings. Not sadness, exactly. More like a signal that used to arrive and now simply doesn't. Most people assume emptiness means depression. That's one of the most persistent misconceptions in popular psychology. Anhedonia can exist without sadness. You can function, smile, even succeed, and feel nothing underneath. Behavioral science has only recently begun treating inner states with genuine scientific rigor. For most of psychology's history, subjective experience was considered too slippery to measure. That changed when neuroscientist Lisa Feldman Barrett published research showing that emotions aren't universal, hardwired reactions. They're predictions the brain actively constructs. That finding quietly reordered the field. Here's what the neuroscience tells us. Emotions aren't passive reactions that happen to you. They're constructed events. The brain assembles what you feel from basic psychological ingredients: prediction, context, memory, and body state. Even the sense of being a separate, continuous self is something the brain builds moment by moment. There's no fixed emotional center waiting to be satisfied, which means the system that generates pleasure can, under certain conditions, quietly stop generating it. Here's where it gets harder. The brain's reward system isn't calibrated to outcomes. It's calibrated to prediction. When life matches your expectations perfectly, the dopamine signal, the one that creates the feeling of reward, barely fires at all. Dopamine doesn't respond to getting what you want. It responds to getting more than you predicted. When you've spent years building toward a goal, achieving it can feel like nothing, because your brain already priced it in long before it arrived. Here's the part that surprises most people. Anhedonia isn't ingratitude. It isn't laziness or entitlement. It's a disruption in the brain's anticipatory pleasure system, the part that makes wanting feel good, not just the receiving. Chronic stress is one of the most reliable ways to erode that anticipatory system. Research by Rockefeller University neuroscientist Bruce McEwen showed that sustained cortisol exposure remodels the prefrontal cortex and suppresses dopaminergic motivation pathways. The nervous system, wired for survival, eventually treats desire itself as a luxury it can't afford. The outside world makes this worse. There's enormous social pressure to perform gratitude, to signal that your objectively good life feels as good as it looks. That performance burns energy, and it quietly teaches the brain that the gap between feeling and showing doesn't matter. Many popular beliefs about human behavior are simply wrong. The idea that positive thinking rewires a depleted reward system is one of them. Telling someone with anhedonia to focus on the good is like telling someone with a broken leg to walk it off. So why does anhedonia take hold in some people and not others? The answer isn't simply genetics or circumstance. Research on cognitive appraisal, the process by which the brain evaluates whether an experience is worth responding to, suggests that people who habitually minimize their own emotional needs gradually train the reward system to expect less and eventually to generate less. This is where the science becomes genuinely useful, because emotions are constructed, assembled from ingredients rather than delivered whole. The construction process can be influenced. The brain that built the numbness can, with the right conditions, build something different. Because dopamine responds to prediction error, novelty becomes neurologically meaningful, not as entertainment, but as a genuine recalibration tool. Unstructured, genuinely new experiences create small gaps between expectation and reality. Those gaps are where the reward signal reactivates. Behavioral science offers a counterintuitive prescription here. Rather than waiting to feel motivated before acting, the evidence says act first, small low-stakes behaviors, because movement precedes feeling, not the other way around. Motivation is the product of action, not its prerequisite. Neuroscience alone doesn't close the loop. Psychologist Scott Barry Kaufman, director of the Center for Human Potential, argues that meaning and pleasure are separate psychological channels. You can have one without the other. Anhedonia often leaves meaning intact, while pleasure goes quiet. Hedonic well-being is the presence of pleasure. Eudaimonic well-being is the sense of living with purpose. Martin Seligman's PERMA framework, developed at the University of Pennsylvania, found that meaning and engagement predicted long-term resilience more reliably than positive emotion alone, making meaning the more durable foundation when pleasure temporarily fails. Here's a related finding worth pausing on. Carleton University psychologist Tim Pychyl has shown that procrastination isn't a time management failure. It's an emotion regulation failure. The brain avoids tasks when it can't generate anticipatory reward for them. Anhedonia and chronic procrastination are, at the neurological level, symptoms of the same depleted system. Modern life is efficient at producing anhedonia without anyone intending it. Constant connectivity, algorithmic stimulation, and the erosion of unstructured time train the brain toward a baseline of overstimulation, which paradoxically leaves it less responsive to quieter, real-world rewards. Something subtle happens when you allow yourself to be bored. Genuine boredom, the unscrolled, unscheduled kind, creates the neurological conditions for spontaneous reward. The brain, given nothing to predict, begins generating its own signal. This isn't wasted time. Genuine social connection, not performance, not networking, but the unguarded kind, remains one of the most reliable modulators of reward sensitivity. Psychiatrist Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory explains why. The nervous system is wired to co-regulate with other nervous systems through shared physiological cues. Isolation doesn't just feel bad, it structurally impairs the pleasure circuit over time. Here's a pattern worth recognizing. Many high-functioning people with anhedonia have spent years optimizing their lives, rather than inhabiting them. Every experience becomes a variable to manage. The brain learns to evaluate rather than feel, and evaluation, unlike experience, produces no reward signal. Remember the prediction error mechanism, the gap between expected and actual that triggers dopamine. You can use this deliberately. Introduce genuine uncertainty into small moments. Take a different route. Eat something unfamiliar. Let an evening be unplanned. The brain rewards what it didn't see coming. Psychology has long understood that naming an internal state reduces its grip. Calling anhedonia what it is, not laziness, not ingratitude, not a character flaw, gives the nervous system a different relationship to the experience. Precision isn't self-pity. It's the beginning of navigation. When anhedonia is persistent, lasting weeks, coloring every domain of life, it moves from a psychological state worth understanding to a clinical signal worth addressing. Cognitive behavioral approaches, and in some cases, pharmacological support, have meaningful evidence behind them. This isn't a territory to cross alone. Here's a reframe that research quietly supports. In a 2007 study published in Psychological Science, researchers found that people who accurately identified negative emotional states, rather than suppressing or mislabeling them, showed faster physiological recovery and sharper decision-making. Emptiness, precisely named, isn't a verdict. It's a navigational signal. Think back to that dinner table. Everything in place, nothing registering. That moment isn't evidence that something is wrong with you as a person. It's evidence that a system, a constructed, calibrated, adjustable system, has drifted out of range. The same science that explains how pleasure disappears also explains how it returns. Because emotional experience is constructed, not delivered. The ingredients can be reintroduced. Not all at once, not through willpower. Through small, deliberate, genuinely uncertain moments that the brain hasn't already priced in. Consider what researchers observed in behavioral activation trials for anhedonia. Patients who committed to one genuinely unplanned activity per day, not a wellness routine, just something with an uncertain outcome, reported measurable increases in anticipatory pleasure within 2 weeks. Not because they felt better first, because they acted before they felt better. The most evidence-supported starting point is also the simplest. One genuinely unstructured hour. No agenda, no optimization, no performed enjoyment. Just presence without prediction. The brain, given space it didn't expect, will often begin quietly, tentatively, to remember what wanting feels like. If modern environments are systematically producing anhedonia through overstimulation, relentless optimization, and the erosion of genuine uncertainty, then the single most countercultural act you can commit today is leaving 1 hour genuinely open. No goal, no output, just an unpredicted hour. That gap is where the signal comes back.